بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو على ما من به علينا من النعم الكثيرة الظاهرة والباطنة، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. أما بعد, by the name of Allah, the most merciful and the most compassionate. All praise belongs to Allah, the one that there's none that has the right to be worshipped except Him, who's bestowed upon us blessings that are numerous, those blessings that are outward and inward. And I bear witness that none has the right to be worshipped other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is alone, without having any partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad ibn Abdullah, that he is his servant and his messenger. May the peace and salutations of Allah be upon him and his family and his companions, and upon all those who follow upon his guidance into the establishment of the last day. To proceed, يا إخوان, فنواصل معكم في الشرح مع إمامنا وشيخنا أبي عبد الله محمد بن حزام البعداني حفظه الله تعالى شرحا على متن بن حجر الأسقلاني بلوغ المرام. So we continue to benefit and to learn together from the words of our Shaykh Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Hizaam al-Ba'dani, may Allah preserve him, as he's explaining the book of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Buluug Maraam.
يكون مقتصرا على أمور خاصة، وبعضها لا يصح جعلها قاعدة لانتقاضها في بعض المواضع. وسيأتي إن شاء الله تعالى في كتابنا هذا فتح العلام ذكر كثير من القواعد في أماكنها.
So he says, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, so it's going to be mentioned, if Allah Ta'ala wills, in this book of ours here, Fathu al-Alam, the explanation of Buluug Maraam. We're going to mention many of these principles, inshallah Ta'ala, in their particular places.
هذا وليعلم أن القاعدة الفقهية تحتاج إلى أن يستدل لها قبل أن يستدل بها.
He says, because this is, so it is known and understood that these al-qawa'id al-fiqhiyya, these principles of Islamic fiqh, before the proofs are used from the Quran and Sunnah, the principles have to be used. So the person, you must use the principles first before you can use the proofs that the principles are built upon.
وعليه فإن العمدة إذن على الكتاب والسنة والإجماع. قال الله عز وجل: اتبعوا ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم ولا تتبعوا من دونه أولياء قليلا ما تذكرون.
He says, and it's upon you to understand that the foundation, the umda, the source and the foundation for you is the book of Allah, the Quran, and the Sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and the ijma', the consensus of the scholars. Allah Ta'ala, He mentions in His noble book, as it comes in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah Ta'ala, He says, اتبعوا ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم, follow what has been sent down to you from your Lord. ولا تتبعوا من دونه أولياء قليلا ما تذكرون, and do not follow other than that, taking it as friends and protectors and guardians besides Allah. How little do they ponder. Surah Al-A'raf.
وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: لا يجمع الله أمتي على ضلالة أبدا. أخرجه الحاكم عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما بإسناد صحيح.
He says, and the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, similarly, he has also mentioned authentic hadith attributed to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, in which he says alayhi salam, لا يجمع الله أمتي على ضلالة أبدا, that Allah will never unite my nation, meaning the nation of Islam, the ummah that follows and believes in the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah will never unite my nation upon misguidance. Never. Our Shaykh al-Ba'dani, he says, this hadith is collected by Imam al-Hakim in his Mustadrak and is narrated by Abdullah ibn Abbas with the authentic chain of narration.
هذا وينبغي لطالب العلم قبل الشروع في دراسة الفقه أن يدرس كتابا في أصول الفقه ولو مختصرا.
He says, so therefore it is imperative upon the student of knowledge before they actually study the science of al-fiqh that they have to study a book from the principles of fiqh, even if they study a summarized book. Even if they study a summarized book.
كالورقات للإمام الجويني رحمه الله. ويحسن به أيضا أن يكون قد درس كتابا في مصطلح الحديث.
He says, for example, if they study a summarized book in usul al-fiqh, like al-waraqat, authored by the great Imam al-Juwayni, may Allah have mercy upon him. He says also good for the student of knowledge also, before he studies the subject of al-fiqh, that he studies a book of mustalah al-hadith, a book that goes over the technical meanings and the categories and the terms of the hadith of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam.
ولو مختصر البيقونية أو اختصار علوم الحديث لابن كثير.
He says even if they study a summarized book in mustalah al-hadith, like the book al-Bayquniyah that has been authored by the great Imam al-Bayquni, may Allah have mercy upon him. He says similarly, like if he were to study the book Ikhtisaru Ulum al-Hadith lil Imam ibn Kathir, like if he were to study the book that has been called the summarization of the science of al-Hadith, authored by the great Imam ibn Kathir, may Allah have mercy upon him.
الله. وفي الأخير أقول اللهم إني أسألك بأني أشهد أنك أنت الله وحدك لا شريك لك المنان.
He says, and at the end of this, lastly, he says, and I say, O Allah, I ask you, and I bear witness, and I testify, O Allah, that you are Allah. MashaAllah, that's beautiful, ya ikhwan. I bear witness, O Allah, that you are Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, and there's none that has the right to be worshipped except you. And you, O Allah, you are the bestower, you are the originator and the creator. You are the originator and the creator and the fashioner of the heavens and the earth. You, O Allah, are the possessor of nobility and honor. And you are the one who is ever living, and everything depends upon you. I ask you, Ya Allah, that I testify that you are Allah. You are the one that as-Samad or al-Ahad. You are the absolute only deity who deserves to be worshipped. You and only you. You, O Allah, are absolute, unique, and alone, singled out in worship. You are al-Samad, the one that all of creation depend upon. You are the one lam yalid. You do not beget, nor are you begotten, and there's nothing equal or similar to you. Oh my Lord, the Shaykh continues to make dua. Oh my Lord, I ask you that you benefit me and the remaining of the Muslims by way of this book. And I ask you, O Allah, that you place in this book al-barakah, blessings, wal-nafa'a, and benefit, and that you allow these blessings and benefit to go on into the establishment of the last day. And I ask, O Allah, that you place this book and my efforts upon my scale of good deeds. And that you allow it to benefit me on that day that no one's children will benefit them, nor will their wealth. And I ask, O Allah, that you make my feet firm, and the feet of my parents firm, and my family firm, and the feet of my brothers firm, and the feet of my teachers firm.
وعلى طلب العلم حتى نلقاك.
And upon my teacher's firm, upon the truth and the sunnah, and upon seeking knowledge until we meet you, O Allah.
ونعوذ بك يا ربي من الفتن ما ظهر منها وما بطن.
And we ask you, Ya Allah, for protection from all those tests and trials, those tests that are apparent and those tests that are hidden.
ومن فتنة المحيا والممات.
And that you protect us from the tests and trials of living and the tests and trials of death.
قال الحافظ رحمه الله تعالى: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله على نعمه الظاهرة والباطنة قديما وحديثا، والصلاة والسلام على نبيه ورسوله محمد وآله وصحبه الذين ساروا في نصرة دينه سيرا حثيثا، وعلى أتباعهم الذين ورثوا علمهم، والعلماء ورثة الأنبياء، أكرم بهم وارثا وموروثا.
So then our Shaikh, Muhammad ibn Hizaam, Hafidhahullah, may Allah preserve him, he continues in the introduction of Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar of Buluug Maraam. He says, Al-Hafidh continues, or rather begins, as he says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, all praise belong to Allah upon the bounties and the favors that Allah has bestowed, those bounties and favors that are apparent, and those bounties and favors that are hidden, those favors that are qadiman, they are old blessings that Allah has bestowed, well, hadithan, and the new bounties and favors that Allah has bestowed. May the peace and salutations of Allah be upon His Messenger Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and upon his family and his companions, and upon all those who aid and support his religion and travel upon his methodology, and upon all those who follow them, those who have inherited their knowledge, as the scholars are the inheritance of the prophets. May Allah honor them, warithan wa muruthan, that which they leave behind, that which, the one who leaves behind, and that which they have left behind.
أما بعد، هذا مختصر يشتمل على وصول الأدلة الحديثية للأحكام الشرعية، حررته تحريرا بالغا ليصير من يحفظه من بين أقرانه نابغا، ويستعين به الطالب المبتدئ ولا يستغني عنه الراغب المنتهي.
He says, Al-Hafidh continues, may Allah have mercy upon him. He says to proceed. So here in front of you is a summary that is comprised of the foundational proofs from the hadith of the Messenger alayhi salatu salam that show the rulings of the legislation of Allah. He says, and I have extracted, or I have summarized it in a manner to make it easy to memorize, so that the person can memorize it from amongst his peers and his colleagues. And he says the likes of this book, the beginner student of knowledge cannot go without it. Also, the one who has reached the ends of his seeking knowledge, he is also in need of it also.
وقد بينت عقب كل حديث من أخرجه من الأئمة لإرادة نصح الأمة.
He says also from the things that I have done in this book here, Al-Hafidh continues, he says at the end of each of the narrations, I have collected, or I have mentioned who collected each narration from the Imams of Islam. He says, in order that it helps, or it nushil ummah, as a benefit to the nation.
قال فالمراد بالسبعة أحمد والبخاري ومسلم وأبو داود والترمذي والنسائي وابن ماجه.
So Al-Hafidh says, when I say the 7 Imams collected it, Al-Hafidh, he says, when he mentions the hadith, and at the end of he says, أخرجه سبعة, the 7 Imams collected it. When I say this, I mean Al-Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Abu Dawood, Imam al-Tirmidhi, and Imam al-Nasa'i, and Imam Ibn Majah, and Imam Ahmed. When I say the 7 Imams collect this, Al-Hafiz says, when I say the 7 Imams, I mean Ahmed, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, and Imam Ibn Majah.
وبالستة من عدا أحمد وبالخمسة من عدا البخاري ومسلم.
He says, so when I say the 6 Imams collected it, I mean the 7 that I mentioned except for Ahmed. So when he says the 6 Imams collected it, he means that number that he just mentioned except for Imam Ahmed. And when he says the 5 scholars collected it, he means that group that he mentioned except for Bukhari and Muslim. So translators note, pay attention to the verbiage of Al-Hafiz. He uses some verbiage in his book Buluug Maraam. When he says the 7 Imams collected it, that's the 7 Imams: Ahmad, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah. When he says the 6 Imams collected it, he's not talking about Ahmad. And when he says the 5 Imams collected it, he's not talking about Bukhari and Muslim from that group.
وقد أقول الأربعة أحمد.
And sometimes he says, and the 4 Imams and Ahmed. Sometimes he says, the 4 Imams and Imam Ahmed. Meaning, Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah. And Ahmed. That means 5. So pay attention there.
وبالأربعة من عدا الثلاثة الأول وبالثلاثة من عداهم والأخير وبالمتفق عليه البخاري ومسلم.
He says, and when I say the hadith is agreed upon, when I use this verbiage, I mean it's collected by Imam al-Bukhari and Muslimun.
وقد لا أذكر معهما غيرهما.
He says, and usually I don't mention who else collected it if it's in Bukhari Muslim. If it's in Bukhari Muslim, I will just say it's in Bukhari Muslim. I won't mention usually where else is it at if it's in Bukhari Muslim.
وما عدا ذلك فهو مبين وسميته بلوغ المرام من أدلة الأحكام.
And other than this, I clarify where the hadith is collected. And I call this collection of hadith Buluug al-Maraam min Adillat al-Ahkam, the arriving or reaching the attainment from the religious proofs of rulings and judgment.
والله أسأل أن لا يجعل ما علمنا علينا وبالا.
And oh Allah, we ask you that you make that which you have taught us a benefit for us.
أن يرزقنا العمل بما يرضيه.
And that you provide for us, bestow upon us actions that pleases you, O Allah,
سبحانه وتعالى.
the most glorified and the exalted. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله.
So the Imam, perhaps we'll stop there, ya ikhwan. He's going into the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala. For you students that have the book, the next class will start with Kitab al-Tahara, the book of purification. نخلي هذا إن شاء الله تعالى درس جديد. Let's leave this part for a new lesson إن شاء الله تعالى. فسنبدأ إن شاء الله تعالى كتاب الطهارة من بلوغ المرام. So we're going to begin inshallah the next class, the book of purification from Buluug al-Maraam. والحمد لله رب العالمين وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.